The night before my surgery, my mother leaned close to me in the hospital room. Her voice was calm, but her eyes carried a weight that made my chest tighten. She said, "If anything goes wrong, I'll make the decisions." I wanted to protest, but I was exhausted and scared. I nodded and signed the consent form, convincing myself everything would be fine. When I opened my eyes after the surgery, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't just pain. It felt like part of me had been taken, as if something I never agreed to was missing. The doctor's words confirmed it. He said, "Your family approved it." I turned to my mother, but she wouldn't look at me. My uncle sat frozen in his chair, and my 9-year-old son stood by the bed with wide, uncertain eyes. Then he whispered, "Should I tell her what Grandma said about getting rid of it?" That was the moment my entire world shifted. The night before the surgery, I could not stop staring at the ceiling of my hospital room. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant, and the rhythmic beeping of machines down the hall made the silence feel heavier. My palms were damp, and my chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. I tried to tell myself it was a routine procedure, something people went through every day, but fear was sitting on my chest like a weight I could not push off. My mother, Maribel, sat beside me in the chair with her hands folded in her lap. She looked strong, like always, but there was a tightness in her jaw I had not seen before. She had raised me on her own after my father passed, and her voice was one I had learned to trust in moments of doubt. That night, though, her words carried a finality that unsettled me. "You'll get through this," she said firmly, "but if something doesn't go the way it should, I'll make the decisions. You need to focus on resting." Her brother, Uncle Peter, had been the one to drive us to the hospital. He stayed mostly quiet, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He'd always been practical, the kind of man who said little but paid attention to everything. His silence made me uneasy because I could not tell whether he agreed with my mother or if he was simply keeping his opinions to himself. Then there was my son, Jonas. At 9 years old, he was still small enough to curl into the corner of the chair, but old enough to sense when something was wrong. He kept swinging his legs nervously, his sneakers tapping against the chair legs. When he caught me looking, he whispered, "Mom, are you scared?" His wide brown eyes searched mine for reassurance I struggled to give. I forced a smile and reached for his hand. "A little, but I'll be fine. I promise." The truth was, I wasn't sure. Signing the consent form felt like surrendering control, but I told myself that my family would protect me if something happened. I trusted my mother, I trusted Uncle Peter, and I wanted to believe that no matter what, Jonas would be safe, and I would come back to him. That belief was the only thing that helped me close my eyes that night. The first thing I felt when I opened my eyes after surgery was not pain, but absence. It was as though a piece of me had been hollowed out, replaced by a weight I could not name. My body was heavy, my throat dry, and my vision blurred as the hospital lights burned overhead. For a moment, I wondered if I was dreaming, if I was still trapped in the anxious haze of the night before. Then the memory of my mother's words from the previous evening hit me. "If anything goes wrong, I'll make the decisions." I tried to push myself up, but the pressure in my abdomen held me down. Panic rushed through me, sharp and immediate, and I searched for something familiar in the room. My mother was there, sitting stiffly in the same chair where she had waited the night before. Her eyes flicked to mine, then quickly down to her hands. That was the first time I felt the chill of suspicion. Maribel never avoided my gaze. Uncle Peter stood in the corner, his arms crossed, eyes locked on the floor as though he was holding something back. He looked more like a man waiting for bad news than someone reassured by a successful surgery. Jonas was standing at the side of my bed, clutching the blanket so tightly his knuckles were white. He had not even noticed I was awake until I whispered his name. "Jonas." My voice was hoarse. His head snapped up, his eyes wide. Relief flashed across his face, but it was mixed with something else, something that unsettled me. He looked as if he had been holding a secret he was not ready to share. Before I could ask him, the doctor entered the room. He wore a practiced expression of calm professionalism, but his words sliced through me. "The surgery went as planned," he said evenly. "We also performed an additional procedure. Your family approved it. It was necessary." At first, I thought I had misheard him. My heart lurched and I turned toward my mother. She still would not meet my eyes. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. The doctor paused. "Given your condition, it was decided that an additional step was in your best interest. Your family gave consent on your behalf." I could not breathe. My best interest? My words came out sharper than I intended, fueled by the fear building in my chest. What was done to me? What did you do? He glanced at my mother before answering. That glance told me more than any words could. My consent had been replaced by theirs. "Don't get upset," my mother said quickly, her voice tight. "It was the right thing. You'll thank us later." My stomach twisted. The right thing? You don't get to decide what's right for my body. I trusted you to protect me, not... I broke off, my throat closing around the words. Uncle Peter shifted uneasily, finally speaking for the first time. "Alara, it's complicated. There were risks. Your mom did what she thought was best." "Complicated?" My voice cracked. "I was supposed to make those decisions. Not you, not her. Me." My mother finally looked at me, her eyes hard. "You're a mother. You can't afford to be reckless. Someone had to think about your future, about Jonas. That's why I stepped in." The room tilted. My pulse hammered in my ears. I turned to Jonas, desperate for something pure in the middle of this storm. He stood frozen, his little chest rising and falling with quick, shallow breaths. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but he looked at my mother and fell silent. I reached for his hand. "Jonas, what is it? What do you know?" He shook his head, biting his lip. His eyes darted to Maribel, then back to me. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. "Jonas," I whispered again, softer this time. "You can tell me." He hesitated, then leaned closer. His voice was small, trembling with the weight of something too big for a child to carry. "Should I tell her what Grandma said about getting rid of it?" The word slammed into me like a physical blow. My body tensed against the mattress. I stared at him, trying to process what he had just said. My mother's face went pale, her lips pressing into a thin line. Uncle Peter closed his eyes as if bracing for the fallout. "Getting rid of what?" My voice was sharp, demanding, even as my hands shook. Jonas looked torn, caught between loyalty to me and fear of his grandmother's reaction. His eyes filled with tears. "Grandma said, if they had the chance, they should make sure you didn't have to worry about another baby. She said it was better that way." The room fell silent, the words hanging in the air like a sentence. My breath caught in my throat, and I turned slowly toward my mother. She did not deny it. She did not even try. She sat there, stone-faced, as if convinced that her choice had been justified. In that moment, every ounce of trust I had placed in her cracked apart. The fear I felt before surgery had been nothing compared to the rage and grief flooding through me now. Something had been taken from me, not by accident, not by medical necessity, but by the people who were supposed to love me the most. My hand tightened around Jonas's, my voice shaking as I whispered, "You had no right. None." The doctor shifted uncomfortably. My uncle stayed silent. My mother's gaze hardened again, but the damage was already done. The truth had been spoken, and there was no way back. The moment Jonas spoke those words, the air in the room grew heavy, pressing against my chest like a weight I could not lift. My son's voice was shaking, yet what he said rang louder than anything I had heard in my life. He had revealed the secret my mother had been guarding, and I could see from her clenched jaw that it was true. Something irreversible had been done to me, and the decision had not been mine. I pulled my hand away from hers, my skin crawling at her touch. My voice cracked, but carried all the force of my anger. "What did you let them do to me?" Maribel leaned forward, her tone sharp, her face as unreadable as stone. "Stop working yourself up. You need to recover. This conversation is not helping." I pushed myself upright despite the sharp pain tearing through my stomach. The physical ache was nothing compared to the fire inside me. "No," I said, my voice steadying. "You will tell me exactly what you signed for, right now." The doctor opened his mouth to speak, but Maribel cut him off. "You don't need to know the details yet. It's better this way." "Better for who?" I shot back. Better for you? Better for your peace of mind? Because it isn't better for me. Jonas flinched at the sharpness in my tone, and I softened when I looked at him. I held his hand again and spoke quietly. Jonas, you were brave to say that. You can always tell me the truth. I need you to know that. He nodded slowly, though his eyes still darted toward Maribel, searching for her approval, afraid of disappointing her. My heart ached for him. My son should never have been burdened with a secret like this, never forced to choose between loyalty to me and obedience to her. I turned to the doctor, fury rising with each breath. Tell me what was done. Don't speak to her. Don't look at her. I am your patient. I deserve to know. He hesitated, shifting uncomfortably, then finally said, A sterilization procedure was performed alongside the main surgery. Your family consented, believing it was in your best medical interest. The words rang like a death knell in my ears. Sterilization. The finality of it crashed over me in waves. My body felt like it was sinking into the mattress, yet my mind burned with defiance. My choices, my future, had been stripped away under the pretense of care. I stared at my mother, betrayal sharp enough to cut through me. You had no right. That was mine to decide, not yours. Her voice rose in defense. You would have made a mistake, Alara. You are raising Jonas alone. You don't need another child to drag you down. I saved you from years of regret. Regret? I choked on the word. Do you hear yourself? You stole the possibility of choice from me. You didn't save me. You destroyed something I can never get back. Uncle Peter finally stepped forward, his voice low and measured. Maribel, maybe we went too far. She deserved to decide. My mother whipped her head toward him. She would have been reckless. She always puts her heart before her head. I wasn't going to let her ruin her life with another mistake. Her words cut deeper than any scalpel. To her, my love for my son, my will to carry him, had been a mistake. My voice trembled, but I met her eyes. Jonas is not a mistake. He is the only thing I have done absolutely right. Jonas's hand squeezed mine and tears welled in his eyes. Mom, I don't want you to be sad. I told you because I thought you should know. I kissed his forehead, brushing his hair back. You did the right thing, sweetheart. You always tell me the truth no matter how hard it is. That's how we stay strong. Inside me, something shifted. The helplessness that had threatened to drown me began to turn into something sharper, steadier. I realized that if I stayed silent, if I accepted what had been done, I would be complicit in my own erasure. I could not change what had happened to my body, but I could reclaim my voice. I looked at the doctor and said, I want everything documented. I want every paper I signed, every paper she signed, every record of what was done to me. I want copies. He nodded reluctantly. That can be arranged. Good, I said, because this isn't over. My mother scoffed, shaking her head. And what will you do? Sue me? Hate me? You'll see, Alara. One day you'll understand this was for the best. I fixed my gaze on her, my voice low and certain. No, Mother. I will never see this as best. You took my choice. You took my trust, but you will never take my voice again. The words settled heavily between us, final and unyielding. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her expression. Perhaps she had expected me to break under her authority, as I had so many times before, but this time was different. Jonas climbed onto the edge of the bed, leaning against me carefully. His small body pressed against mine was a reminder of what I still had, of what I was fighting for. I wrapped my arm around him, feeling strength return to me in a way I had not expected. That was the moment I decided. If I could not undo what had been taken, I would make sure no one ever silenced me again. I would stand for Jonas, for myself, and for the choices that were stolen. My mother's betrayal had broken something, but it had also awakened something stronger. The silence that followed my words was almost unbearable. My mother sat rigid in the chair, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting from me to Jonas as though she wanted to regain control of the moment, but could not find the ground to stand on. The truth had already been dragged into the light, and there was no way to force it back into shadows. I could feel my pulse racing. Every beat seemed to echo in my ears. The anger that had been simmering inside me was no longer something I could hold back. It surged forward, fueled by betrayal and grief, but sharpened by the determination not to let my mother's decision define the rest of my life. "Tell him," I said, my voice low but firm. "Tell Jonas what you did to me. Tell him why his mother will never have the choice to give him a brother or a sister." Jonas's head snapped toward her. His eyes were wide and pleading, desperate for her to say something that would make everything untrue. He wanted her to tell us both that the doctor had been mistaken, that what he had overheard was nothing more than a misunderstanding. Maribel inhaled deeply, her hands gripping the armrests of the chair. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "I did what I had to do," she said finally. "I protected you. I protected Jonas. You may not see it now, but one day you will." "No," I said sharply. "You didn't protect me. You decided for me. You stole from me. You thought you knew better, but what you really did was strip me of the one thing no one has the right to take, my choice. My body was not yours to bargain with." Uncle Peter shifted uncomfortably and muttered, "She's right, Maribel. This went too far. You should have told her. You should have trusted her." She turned on him, her eyes blazing. "And let her destroy herself with another child she couldn't raise alone? You think that would have been better? You think I was going to stand by and watch her life collapse again?" Her words sliced through me, but I forced myself to stand firm. My son is not a collapse. He is not a burden. He is the reason I fight, the reason I keep moving. You call his existence a mistake, but he is my greatest blessing. You could not take him from me, so you tried to take every future child I might have had. That is not protection. That is control. That is betrayal." Jonas's face crumpled. "Grandma, is that true? You didn't want me?" Her expression faltered. She reached out to him, but he pulled away, pressing himself into my side. My heart broke for him, but I held him close, my hand resting gently on his back. "You are wanted," I whispered into his hair. "You are loved. You always will be." The room went silent again, broken only by the sound of my son's quiet sniffles. The doctor stood awkwardly near the door, clearly wishing he could escape the storm he had helped unleash. I turned to him, my voice steady. "I want everything in writing. I want every detail of what was done. I will not let this vanish into silence." He nodded, his expression unreadable, and promised to provide the documents. Maribel stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You can hate me now if you want, but I saved you. I won't apologize for making the hard choice when you were too afraid to face it." I felt a cold fury spread through me, not wild and consuming, but sharp and clear. "You didn't save me. You broke me. And if you think I will ever forgive you for deciding my future without me, you are wrong. From this day forward, I make my own choices. You will not speak for me. You will not sign for me. You will not silence me again." She froze, her mouth opening as if to argue, but no words came. For the first time, she looked smaller, diminished by the weight of what she had done. The power she had held over me all my life had cracked. Jonas looked up at me with tear-streaked cheeks. "Mom, we don't need her, do we?" I kissed the top of his head and whispered, "No, baby. We have each other. That's enough." Uncle Peter exhaled slowly and stepped closer. His eyes softened, and though he said little, I could tell he was silently siding with me. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. My mother turned and walked toward the door. Her shoulders were rigid, her movements brisk, but she did not look back. For once, she did not have the final word. As the door closed behind her, I felt both broken and free. My body had been altered against my will, and nothing could undo that, but the grip my mother had over my life had been shattered in the same moment. She had stolen something irreplaceable, yet in doing so, she had also given me the clarity to stand on my own. I held Jonas close, my hand pressed to his small back, and I knew that whatever came next, I would fight with everything in me to protect him and to protect myself. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also drawn a line that would never be crossed again. That was the climax of my story. The moment I realized the person I trusted most had betrayed me, and the moment I vowed never to let anyone else take my voice away. When the door shut behind my mother, the room felt different. The silence she left behind was heavy, but for the first time it belonged to me. I leaned back against the bed, exhaustion flooding every part of me. But beneath the exhaustion was something stronger, a certainty I had not felt before. My body might have been altered without my consent, but my will was intact, and that was something she could never take. Jonas stayed curled against me, his head resting on my shoulder. His small frame was trembling, and I smoothed my hand over his back. "You're safe," I whispered to him. "No one can change that. As long as I'm here, no one will ever take from us again." He looked up at me, his eyes wet and searching. "Do you promise?" I met his gaze. "I promise. And I don't break promises." Those words became more than reassurance for him. They became a vow to myself. I had spent my life believing my mother knew best, letting her voice overpower my own. But that night, lying in a hospital bed stitched together after a betrayal I would carry forever, I understood the cost of silence. I would not pay it again. The days that followed were not easy. The doctor provided the paperwork I demanded, each page a painful reminder of what had been taken from me. Reading the cold clinical description of my sterilization procedure made me nauseous, but I forced myself to go through every line. I needed to see it with my own eyes, to face the truth no matter how brutal. Uncle Peter visited often, always bringing small comforts for Jonas, like coloring books or bags of snacks. He never said much about what happened, but his presence was steady. One evening, as he was leaving, he paused by my bed and said quietly, "I'm sorry, Alara." I should have stopped her. I nodded, unable to speak at first. "You didn't do it, Peter. But you saw it coming. You knew." He sighed heavily. "I thought she was just being dramatic. I didn't think she'd actually go through with it. That's on me." I appreciated his honesty. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it reminded me that not everyone in my family had been complicit. That mattered, even if it was small. Jonas, though, carried the weight differently. At night, he began to ask questions I struggled to answer. "Mom, why would Grandma say I was a mistake? Why didn't she want you to have another baby?" His little voice broke my heart because no child should ever have to wonder if they were truly wanted. I held him tightly every time and said the same words until they were etched into both our hearts. "You are not a mistake. You are my miracle. If I could choose 1,000 times, I would choose you every single time." His trust in me began to rebuild, but I knew my mother's words had left scars on him, too. That was another reason I decided to cut ties with her. It wasn't just for me anymore. It was for him. He needed to grow up knowing that love is something you give freely, not something that comes with conditions or control. The weeks of recovery gave me time to think. I thought about every moment in my life when I had deferred to my mother, every time I had swallowed my own instincts because she insisted she knew better. It was a pattern woven into me since childhood, and I had accepted it for years because I thought it came from love. Now I saw it clearly. It wasn't love, it was dominance, disguised as protection. I realized that what happened in the operating room was the final extension of that control. She had found a way to speak for me even when I could not speak for myself, but in doing so, she had lost me. She would never have that power again. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the hospital window, I sat with Jonas and told him the truth in simple words. Sometimes people think they know what's best for us, but that doesn't mean they're right. What matters is that we learn to listen to ourselves. We can't always control what others do, but we can decide how we live after. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I want you to learn too. He nodded, thoughtful in the way only a child can be. So, we just don't let people make choices for us? Exactly, I said. We stand up for ourselves, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. When I was discharged and returned home, the world felt different. My body carried new scars, both visible and invisible, but my mind carried something stronger than fear. My mother called several times, leaving messages filled with justification and anger, but I didn't answer. I blocked her number eventually, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Jonas and I deserved peace, and she had made it clear she could not give it. In the quiet of our home, with just the two of us, I found something I thought I had lost. Strength. Not the strength that comes from pretending everything is fine, but the kind that comes from facing the truth and choosing to move forward anyway. Looking back, I know I will carry grief for what was taken from me. I will carry anger for the way it happened, but I will also carry pride for the moment I decided to take back my voice. My mother believed she ended my future, but what she really did was ignite a future I will shape with my own hands. As I tucked Jonas into bed one night, he whispered, "I'm glad you're my mom." Tears filled my eyes, but my voice was steady. "I'm glad you're my son. You're the reason I'll never let anyone silence me again." That is the lesson I carry now. Trust is precious, and once broken, it cannot be blindly given again. Choice is sacred, and once stolen, it cannot be restored, but it can be defended. And love, the real kind, the kind that builds instead of controls, must be chosen every day, freely without force. My story is not only about betrayal, it is about reclaiming myself after everything was taken. It is about choosing to stand, even when standing hurts. It is about looking into the eyes of my son and promising that no matter what scars we carry, our lives will always be our own. That was the night my world changed forever. I walked into surgery believing my family would protect me, but I woke up to a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about trust. In the end, I learned that no one should ever hold the power to decide who we are or what our future should look like. That power belongs to us, and only us. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in my place? Share your perspective in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you found this story powerful, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and it means more than you know. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourself and hold on tightly to your voice.